1978. Hong Kong. A dimly lit gym tucked away in Kowloon district, where the air hung thick with sweat, chalk dust, and testosterone. This was where reputations were made and broken in a single afternoon. And on this particular day, Jackie Chan, already known in certain circles, but not yet the global phenomenon he would become, walked through those doors completely unaware that the next 30 minutes would define everything he believed about himself. The gym fell silent the moment he entered. Not because everyone recognized him, not because they were in awe, but because standing in the center of the floor, arms crossed like tree trunks, was a man who looked like he'd been carved from granite by an angry sculptor. 250 pounds of pure muscle, an American bodybuilder who'd been making the rounds in Hong Kong's underground fighting scene, crushing local competitors with the kind of casual brutality that made grown men reconsider their life choices. His name was Marcus the Mountain Henderson, and he was looking directly at Jackie. "You?" Marcus's voice boomed across the gym, a deep rumble that seemed to vibrate through the floorboards. "You're the guy they keep talking about?" He let out a laugh that sounded like boulders tumbling down a hillside. "You are too small to fight." The other gym-goers exchanged glances. Some smirked, others looked away, already embarrassed on Jackie's behalf. Jackie Chan stood at 5'8", maybe 150 pounds soaking wet. Next to Marcus, he looked like a child who'd wandered into the wrong birthday party. But here's what nobody in that gym knew, what the history books would later gloss over, what even Jackie himself would rarely discuss in interviews decades later. This moment wasn't about size, it wasn't about strength, it was about something far more dangerous than physical power. It was about proving that everything Jackie had built his life around wasn't just circus tricks and movie magic. Let me take you back 3 weeks before this confrontation. Jackie had just wrapped filming on Snake in the Eagle's Shadow, a film that would eventually revolutionize Hong Kong cinema and launch him into superstardom. But in that moment, the movie hadn't been released yet. The critics were skeptical. The studio executives were nervous, and Jackie was exhausted, physically, mentally, spiritually drained from the brutal production schedule, the endless takes, the injuries that kept accumulating like interest on a debt he couldn't pay off. He'd started visiting this particular gym in Kowloon because it was anonymous. Nobody knew him here. Nobody asked for autographs or wanted to talk about his latest film. He could just be another body pushing through the pain, trying to maintain the peak physical condition his career demanded. But Marcus Henderson had been watching him, observing the way Jackie moved, the flexibility, the speed, the unorthodox training methods that looked more like dance than traditional martial arts conditioning. And Marcus, like many people who've built their identity around raw physical dominance, saw Jackie's approach as an insult, a joke, a fraud. "You hear me, little man?" Marcus called out again, taking 3 heavy steps forward. The entire gym felt those footsteps. "They tell me you're some kind of fighter, that you do all these crazy stunts. But I'm looking at you right now and I'm thinking," he paused for effect, making sure everyone was listening, "I'm thinking this is what passes for tough in Hong Kong." Jackie stood perfectly still. His expression was unreadable, but inside, something was calculating, processing. Anyone who knew Jackie well, his stunt team, his directors, his childhood friends from the Peking Opera School, would have recognized that particular quality of stillness. It was the stillness of a coiled spring, the quiet before controlled chaos. But Marcus didn't know Jackie. None of them did. "Tell you what," Marcus continued, now enjoying his performance. The crowd was growing. People were stopping their workouts, drawn by the inevitable gravity of confrontation. "Since you're so small, I'll give you a handicap. First hit is free. Come on, take your best shot." He spread his arms wide, offering his massive chest as a target. His face split into a condescending grin that said he'd done this 100 times before, with 100 other guys who thought they were tough until they felt what real power was. Now here's where the story takes its first unexpected turn. Jackie looked down at his shoelaces. Then he looked back up at Marcus, confusion washing over his face, like he'd just woken up from a nap and didn't understand where he was. He took a step forward, and his foot caught on absolutely nothing. The floor was completely flat, and he stumbled, arms windmilling in exaggerated circles, barely catching himself on a nearby weight bench. The gym exploded with laughter. Marcus doubled over, slapping his massive thigh. "Oh man, this is priceless. This is the guy, this clumsy." He couldn't even finish the sentence through his laughter. Jackie straightened up, looking sheepish and embarrassed, scratching the back of his head in that particular way that would later become one of his signature character traits on screen. He gave a little self-deprecating smile, bowing slightly as if apologizing for wasting everyone's time. "Maybe I just go," Jackie said softly, his English deliberately broken, playing into every stereotype Marcus and the crowd expected. But as he turned to leave, something shifted in his body language. It was subtle. If you weren't paying close attention, you'd miss it entirely. His shoulders squared just slightly. His weight redistributed. His center of gravity dropped by maybe 2 inches, and then he moved. What happened next occurred so fast that witnesses would later disagree on the exact sequence of events. Some swore Jackie spun 360 degrees. Others insisted he jumped straight up. A few claimed they never even saw him move. He was just suddenly in a different position. But everyone agreed on what they saw. Jackie's foot connecting with the heavy bag that hung approximately 7 feet off the ground, a bag that Marcus had been using for warm-ups, a bag that must have weighed at least 70 pounds. The impact sounded like a thunderclap. The bag rocketed backward, chain links screaming in protest, swinging in a violent arc that sent it crashing into the wall, with enough force to crack the plaster. The entire gym shook. Chalk dust rained down from the ceiling. Absolute silence. Jackie landed lightly on his feet, that same sheepish expression still plastered on his face, but now everyone could see something different in his eyes. Something that suggested the stumbling, bumbling fool from 30 seconds ago had never existed at all. Marcus's smile evaporated. His face went through several expressions in rapid succession: confusion, disbelief, and then finally, something that might have been the first whisper of concern. "Okay," Marcus said slowly, rolling his massive shoulders. "Okay. So you can kick, that's cute. But kicking bags is different from fighting a man, especially a man like me." He dropped into a fighting stance, and it was immediately clear why he'd been dominating the underground circuit. Despite his size, Marcus moved with surprising fluidity. His guard was tight, his footwork was solid. This wasn't just some bodybuilder playing tough guy, he actually knew how to fight. They began to circle each other, and the crowd instinctively stepped back, forming a makeshift ring. Nobody was laughing anymore. The energy in the room had completely transformed. This was serious now. This was real. Marcus threw the first punch, a jab that cut through the air with the force of a piston. Fast for a man his size, hard enough to end most fights if it connected. Jackie leaned back, the fist passing so close to his nose that the air displacement ruffled his hair. But here's the thing people didn't understand about Jackie's defensive movement. It wasn't just defense, it was setup. As Marcus's arm extended, Jackie's hand flicked out almost casually and tapped Marcus's wrist. Just a tap. Nothing that looked remotely like a martial arts technique, more like someone trying to get a friend's attention. But that tap redirected Marcus's momentum by maybe 3 degrees. Just enough that when Marcus tried to pull his arm back, he found himself slightly off balance, his weight distributed wrong, his center of gravity betrayed by geometry he didn't understand. Jackie didn't capitalize on it. Not yet. He just kept moving, his feet gliding across the floor in a pattern that seemed random, but absolutely wasn't. He was mapping the space, understanding distances, reading Marcus's rhythms. Marcus threw a combination. Jab, cross, hook. Professional level boxing technique executed with the power of a freight train. Jackie slipped the jab, ducked under the cross, and then instead of avoiding the hook, he stepped into it, getting so close to Marcus that the hook had no power, the massive fist passing harmlessly behind Jackie's head. For just a moment, they were face to face, inches apart. Jackie smiled. It was the smile that did it. That's what people remembered most. Not mocking, not cruel, just playful. Like this was all an elaborate game and Jackie was having the time of his life. Marcus roared and threw a wild haymaker, abandoning technique in favor of raw power, trying to simply overwhelm this small man who dared to smile at him. Jackie executed a move that would later become famous in his films, but that nobody in that gym had ever seen in real life. He ran up Marcus's body, literally. Right foot on Marcus's thigh, left foot on his hip, right foot on his chest, using the massive bodybuilder as a stepping stone, flipping backward through the air in a perfect arc, landing behind Marcus with the kind of acrobatic precision that didn't seem physically possible. The crowd gasped. Someone dropped a weight with a resounding clang. But Jackie wasn't done. As Marcus spun around, confused and increasingly frustrated, Jackie started moving in earnest, not attacking, just moving. Flowing around the larger man like water around a stone, staying always just out of reach, making Marcus chase him, making him turn, making him expend energy. And then Jackie started adding sound effects. Wah! A little yelp as he jumped over a kick. Oh! A surprised noise as he barely dodged a punch. Hoo! An exaggerated yell as he stumbled deliberately into another pratfall, rolling across the floor, popping back up with his guard raised in a panicked stance. The gym crowd didn't know whether to laugh or be terrified. This was nothing like they'd ever seen. It was martial arts, yes, but filtered through something else, something theatrical, something that turned violence into performance without diminishing the very real danger. Marcus was breathing heavily now. Despite his superior size and conditioning, he'd been chasing Jackie for 3 full minutes, throwing punches at shadows, never quite connecting, burning through his energy reserves at an unsustainable rate. "Stand still," Marcus bellowed, genuine frustration bleeding into his voice. Jackie stopped moving. He stood perfectly still in the center of the impromptu ring, arms at his sides, completely open. Marcus charged, and for a split second, everyone watching thought Jackie had made a fatal mistake. That massive bodybuilder frame moving at full speed, hands reaching out to grab, to crush, to finally end this humiliating dance. What happened next occurred in the space between heartbeats. Jackie's hands came up, not in fists, but open-palmed. As Marcus reached for him, Jackie's left hand deflected the grabbing arm outward. His right hand slipped under Marcus's guard and pressed against the center of his chest. Not a strike, just pressure, just a push. But it was a push delivered with perfect timing, perfect angle, perfect transference of energy through the kinetic chain of Jackie's entire body, from his feet through his legs, through his hips, through his torso, through his arm, and into that single point of contact. Marcus flew backward. He didn't fall. He didn't stumble. He flew. His feet left the ground. He traveled backward through the air for a good 6 feet before gravity remembered he existed and brought him crashing down onto his back on the gym's padded floor, with an impact that drove all the air from his lungs in a massive whoosh. The gym was silent, except for Marcus's desperate gasps for breath. Jackie walked over and extended his hand to help the fallen bodybuilder up. Marcus stared at that hand for a long moment, his entire worldview undergoing rapid recalibration. Everything he thought he understood about fighting, about power, about dominance, it was all being rewritten in real time. He took Jackie's hand. Jackie pulled him up with surprising ease, and as Marcus regained his feet, Jackie patted him on the shoulder, a gesture that was somehow both condescending and genuinely friendly. "Size not everything," Jackie said, in that same broken English, but now nobody was fooled by the simplicity of the words. Speed important, timing important, but most important, he tapped his own temple. Mind. Strategy. Make big opponent fight your fight, not his fight. Marcus nodded slowly, still catching his breath, humility settling over him like a heavy coat. Teach me, he said quietly. Jackie smiled. That same playful smile, but warmer now. Okay. But first rule. No more calling people too small. Size just one measurement. Heart. He tapped Marcus's chest. Heart is real measurement. But here's what none of the witnesses to that confrontation could have known. Here's the secret that Jackie carried out of that gym and would carry with him throughout his career. He was terrified the entire time. Not of Marcus, not of the fight, but of what it meant. Because Jackie understood something that would take the rest of the world years to grasp. Everything he'd built was fragile. The movies, the stunts, the persona. It all balanced on the knife's edge of credibility. One real loss, one genuine defeat in a situation like this, and suddenly people would start questioning everything. They'd wonder if the film fights were real. They'd doubt his abilities. They'd see through the carefully constructed myth to the very human person underneath. That's why he'd made it theatrical. That's why he'd added the comedy, the pratfalls, the sound effects. Not just because it was his nature, though it was, but because it transformed a potentially dangerous situation into a performance. It gave both him and Marcus a way out that preserved dignity while establishing dominance. It was the same principle he'd been applying to his films, though he didn't fully articulate it until years later. Make the audience feel safe while showing them something dangerous. Make them laugh while showing them something serious. Give them the thrill without the actual threat. In 3 weeks, Snake in the Eagle's Shadow would premiere. In 6 months, Jackie Chan would be the biggest martial arts star in Asia. In a decade, he'd be conquering Hollywood. But in that moment, standing in a grimy Kowloon gym with a humbled bodybuilder and a crowd of witnesses who'd just seen something they couldn't quite explain, Jackie understood that he'd proven something important, not to them, to himself. He could make it real. He could take the techniques, the training, the discipline from the Peking Opera School and the martial arts masters, and he could make it work in the actual world, not just on camera. And more importantly, he could do it his way, with humor, with creativity, with humanity. Marcus did become his student, in a way. Not formally, but for the next few months, the massive bodybuilder would show up at Jackie's training sessions, learning not just techniques but philosophy, learning that true strength wasn't about domination, but about adaptability. That power without wisdom was just violence. That the greatest martial artists were the ones who never had to fight because they'd already won in the mind of their opponent. And Jackie learned something too. He learned that he didn't need to be the biggest or the strongest, he just needed to be the smartest, the fastest, the most creative. He needed to make his opponents fight his fight on his terms, by his rules. That gym encounter never made it into the official biographies. No cameras captured it. No journalist reported it. It exists only in the memories of the people who were there, and in the way Jackie approached every role, every stunt, every fight scene for the rest of his career. Watch any Jackie Chan movie closely, and you'll see echoes of that afternoon in 1978. The way he turns his size disadvantage into an advantage. The way he uses the environment as a weapon. The way he makes his enemies look foolish while never being cruel. The way he takes violence and filters it through comedy without diminishing its impact. It's all there. The entire philosophy. The complete approach to martial arts cinema that would revolutionize action movies worldwide. And it all came from a bodybuilder who thought size was all that mattered, and a martial artist who proved that in the right hands, everything is a weapon, including humility, timing, and a well-placed smile. 3 weeks later, Snake in the Eagle's Shadow would premiere and confirm what that gym full of witnesses already knew. Jackie Chan was something different, something the world had never seen before. But the real victory wasn't in the box office numbers or the critical acclaim that would follow. The real victory was in that gym, on that afternoon, when a small man proved that size doesn't determine strength, and a big man learned that wisdom beats power every single time.